Hi, welcome to SHOWstudio. It's a Sunday, a day of rest, but not for us because it's Paris Fashion Week. And yesterday, the incredible Dries Van Noten presented his last runway presentation as creative director of his eponymous brand. I'm joined by some amazing Dries enthusiasts, and we're gonna break down the Spring-Summer 25 menswear spectacular. Before we get into it, I'll let my panelists introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Chani Ra. I'm a content creator and host of the Fashion App.
Hello, I'm Robert Leech. I'm currently final year lead at the University of Westminster's BA Fashion Design course.
Hi, I'm Lara McGrath. I'm a stylist and a kind of self-portrait artist.
Hi, I'm Ebony Atakorah. I'm a creative director and founder of creative production house Studio Dream.
And I'm Joshua Graham, fashion features editor at SHOWstudio. Before we look at the collection, I got a question yesterday from an amazing journalist in New York named Kanika Talwar, who asks, why do you think the Dries Van Noten brand resonates so deeply with so many people and has lasted nearly 4 decades with the same designer, which is basically unheard of in this industry?
I can go. I think, you know, his design and his approach to design is very kind of tangible and human and really relatable to so many people. And I think, you know, he's been so consistent for so many years without being overly nostalgic or samey. I think it's just very approachable and appealing to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the approachability and the desirability is our key factors, absolutely.
Yeah, I think the wearability, the feeling of being able to take the piece but also make it your own. I feel like it's very like transitional into your own wardrobe, and also like it's more about pieces that like make you feel good. It's not like a gimmick or like a walk-in advertisement. I feel like they're very, like you say, like human pieces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he has like 1 foot in classic and 1 foot in future, and I think it's kind of like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. He just cracked it and stuck with what he wants to do rather than being like super influenced by everybody else. Yeah. And it worked.
Yeah, and it's worked for like almost 4 decades, which is insane.
So crazy.
It's really, I guess, the end of an era, seeing him retire. But I think it also speaks to him as a designer being able to make it so long as an independent brand. I think he's definitely seen the industry change so much since he graduated from the Royal Academy in 1986. And he said with this show, he didn't want it to feel overly sentimental or nostalgic. He still wanted to show this foot moving forward. What did we think of the collection? It's menswear, but it was co-ed.
Yeah, I think exactly what you said. Like, it didn't feel like he took the opportunity to kind of do like a retrospective or something like that. Like, there were nods to obviously his signatures, but also I felt like it felt very, very modern, very like, he's not really like a trend-driven designer, but like you would wear these pieces and like you would feel like current, I would say, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it really showcases his mastery of fabric and color and print. You know, nobody quite layers fabrics like Dries, and you know, gets the prints working with the checks, with the stripes, with
like
you know, with the transparency and the solids. It's all, it's just masterful, absolutely masterful.
I do think there was still like a great deal of restraint with this collection. I think, yes, he's really incredible when it comes to being quite ornate and striking that balance between opulent and Belgian pragmatism. And his eye for color is fantastic.
Yeah.
But this collection, I thought he really played with neutrals and pastels and earth tones, and I don't know, it felt incredibly romantic, but not like a greatest hits.
Yeah, I guess the totally monochromatic looks are kind of fresh, really, for Dries.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like that with a couple of his past collections, both men's and women's wear. There has been an element of, I guess you said, restraint. Not that I feel like he's like holding back, just kind of like a slightly, like a kind of more of a controlled like color scheme. But I think that speaks to the kind of the times. Like that's also what's making the clothes feel like really relevant.
Reflective of the world as
exactly.
at the moment, you know, the zeitgeist. Totally.
What I really liked about it is, as you were saying, like it's not a retrospect or like a greatest hits. I like that, greatest hits. It kind of looks to me, how I took it is like somebody just doing what they love for the last time and just really doing it how they would normally do their job. I saw a really good interview, and typically I cannot remember what it was, but when I remember, I'll comment. But they were asking him like, oh, at the end of each show, is that the second you start thinking about the next season? And he was like, yeah, but I love having the chance, like, oh, there's always next season, there's always next season. Yeah. So I was really intrigued to see, like, what was Dries do when there isn't next season? And I think, not to jump ahead of topics, but like, the next person coming in, if they use that angle, like, oh, I'm gonna see what I would have done differently and use next season, that might be a really nice way to ease into such a scary position without too much criticism.
Yeah.
I think that was the 2017 Vanessa Friedman interview, which I thought was really interesting because interviews he's done just before the show, he talks about kind of the, I don't know, the kind of melodramatic feelings he's feeling about this being the last one and how much he's probably going to miss it. He has said he's still going to be very involved with the brand on an advisory basis. He's just not going to be so involved in the collections. But he specified he'd be really involved in beauty and fragrance, which I thought was really interesting. Do you think he's too young to be retiring? He's 66. I think his contemporaries are still kicking. Giorgio Armani and Rei Kawakubo and...
No, I don't.
No.
Yeah, at all. I think he's doing it on his own terms, and that's really beautiful. And I think it's a really beautiful way to kind of end this chapter. And like you said, he's going to move into focusing on fragrance, on beauty, and I'm sure that's a really exciting kind of challenge and transition for him. But too young, no. It's his time and on his terms.
I mean, yeah. I think for obviously huge Dries fans, it's an emotional moment. But I also think 38 years of men's and women's collections every year, like, I think you can have a rest. And like, I think he's like, into, you know, like maybe I can see him like gardening.
Yeah, I kind of oversee one collection a year, and over the last 40 years, and that feels like I could do with taking my foot off the pedal. So I do, I do understand.
I think the emotional response to him stepping down is very warranted and very valid from his longtime fans, but also from, I think, people who yearn for a fashion industry that maybe doesn't exist anymore or is really on its way out. He's always said he's a designer, he's a garment maker. He's all about working with his hand and creating with his hand. His brand was notoriously independent until 2017. He's also not done pre-collections ever because he's always wanted to focus on those two. And he's never really veered into the world of celebrity and influencer marketing. This show, a lot of the press have been talking about, that lack of a front row that we expect from a fashion show these days.
Interestingly, it was more about other designers than celebrities, which is, again, really beautiful thing.
Yeah, so Glenn Martens was there, Heider Ackerman was there, Martin Margiela was there, allegedly. Nobody knows what he looks like. What do we think about that? This end of a maker like Dries?
A designer's designer.
A designer's designer.
Yeah.
Your designer's favorite designer.
Yeah.
Is it kind of, I don't know, bittersweet?
Yeah, it is. But I think fashion is something that moves with the times. You can't expect, even great things must come to an end. And I think more to be appreciative of like the craftsmanship that he's displayed over the years than to kind of like, I guess in a sense it is, you are mourning that loss because, like you said, fashion as an industry has changed so much. But I would just be more excited about I'm sure he's kind of looking also to the future and like the possibilities of what could happen for the brand and the house.
Well, I think it's sad for the fans, obviously, but I'm sure it's not sad for him. Like, he made the decision. And I think sometimes as like fashion lovers, like we have our favorite brands and our favorite designers and we want to sort of keep everything in a time capsule because we like it. But it's like, if he was there by force miserable, what collections would he be making? Do you know what I mean? So I think he's, do you know what I mean? He's chosen his moment that he wants to end it on, and we have to respect it. And I think sometimes the fashion fans, myself included, do get carried away in, she shouldn't be doing this, and this would be better than that, but it's not our business.
Right.
Yeah, well, I think it is bittersweet, but I think even the fans, there's just such a huge, great amount of respect for him and his craft and his contribution, and I think people are happy for him and also excited, looking forward, like what happens next, what does he do next, but also what is the kind of next chapter for the brand. So I think people are sad, but also really, really proud, and it's amazing what he's been able to achieve over the last 40 years, as you said.
Also, like the clothes and the references like live on. Like people are still gagged from like, you know, Galliano for Dior. Like people, it's like that's going to continue for like decades to come. So I think there's also like a kind of timeless. It doesn't really have an expiry like what he's given to the industry.
Jesus said in interviews that he doesn't really like the term fashion because of the connotation that it's kind of changing, and what he does is quite timeless. When we look at this collection and think about maybe his earlier years in the late 80s and 90s, do we think it's changed all too much, or do you think that consistency is what people continue to gravitate to? Has he perfected the wheel in a sense for his own aesthetic? I guess this is mainly a question for Robert, because in your styling
Right,
days,
okay,
you
here we
worked
go.
with some early Dries collections.
Yeah, I think this must have been Dries's either first or second ever menswear collection I styled for an ID shoot in, I think 86 or 87, I can't quite remember. But it was not long after the Antwerp Six showed in London. And Dries was represented by a brilliant PR at the time called Mauricio Voronezka, one of the great London PRs. There were many in the 80s. So here's Dries's first or second menswear collection in ID, styled by me, shot by Monica Curtin. And actually, one of the models in the shoot I've just noticed in the show, John Armstrong. So it's not him in this picture, but he's in one of the other pictures from the shoot. Not wearing Dries there, but that's him on the right. That's who walked the show.
Amazing. Dries said casting for this season was a mix of longtime models, longtime friends, collaborators, but also first-time models who've only walked Dries this one time. What do we think about that choice in this celebratory display?
Well, yeah, I suppose it adds to that whole timeless story, that fact of models of all ages very comfortably wearing.
And I have a question for Ebony, because what you do has a lot to do with producing big fashion parties and events. What did you think about this outing?
I thought it was beautiful, you know, really celebratory, really emotional as well, but I think everything was really intentional, from, you know, the set design, the giant disco ball coming out at the end, the music, you know, the Bowie soundtrack, you know, all of the language that came in there. It was very, very, very emotive. And I think, yeah, what a way to go out, you know, kind of quite simple, but lots and lots of detail, and just everything was very, very considered. It was wonderful.
Joyful and
Yeah.
Yeah, just enough nods to the past without being too nostalgic, but the switching up the gold leaf for the silver leaf was beautiful, and obviously the choice of models, the casting.
Yeah, I heard people were kind of grabbing bits of the, you know, the silver leaf at the end just to kind of hold on to
I would have done the same,
I'm pretty sure our editor, Hedy Malik, who was at the show, did exactly that.
Got a bag full.
Yes, I'm hoping she brings some for the studio.
Oh, yes. Knowing Hetty.
When we look at this collection, what do we think about the Dries aesthetic? What is it that captivates consumers and has captivated audiences for nearly 40 years? Because, like we've said, it hasn't. He's never been one to provoke through constant change and evolution. There's a real consistency in his louche line and his kind of romantic sensibility.
Yeah, I don't know an English word. The French would be dégagé, I guess. That sort of almost undressed, kind of casual louche, as you say.
Yeah, I would say like the breadth of piece, like it's you know, like there's kind of like a little bit of everything that you would want in like an amazing wardrobe, and they're all pieces that you can style in like so many different ways. I always think that, like, as a stylist watching shows, it's kind of like, oh, that looks amazing, but like I could also like, I can see myself wearing it like this and it would like also look amazing. And just the fact that he's managed to do that consistently for so long, and you don't ever feel like, you can look at a Dries look and be like, that definitely is Dries, but you're not like, oh, that's the same thing that he did last season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. As a stylist from 40 years ago, it was interesting for me when I remember doing that shoot, even though I can't quite remember what year, but I remember it was a collection that almost styled itself.
Yeah.
Because the checks went with the stripes, went
Exactly,
with the
like,
knitwear, went with the poplin, everything. It was totally interchangeable. And
yeah, like if you made those little books where it's like, you know, when you're younger, it's like the shirt is the top and they have like splits, and you could do that and it would just look amazing for probably everything.
I think his stuff is like interesting enough that it appeals to people that like to get dressed, but then it's simple enough that pretty much anyone can wear it and fit it into their wardrobe. And I've been binging the interviews, and I'm so sorry I can't remember which one it was again. They're all like one big interview in my head now. But I can't remember if I read or watched, but he was saying he was really surprised to see that like Rihanna is a huge Dries fan, and whenever he sees her wear it, he's like, oh, like I never would have thought to put it that way, but it's kind of like, all I can hear now is I'm every woman, like a man. But yeah, it's something for everybody there. So I think that's why it stood the test of time so much. It is sort of like no frills, but still interesting. It's not boring.
He said in a Women's Wear Daily interview before the show that those kind of early years were really interesting for him to navigate, because he had opportunities to do like spreads for Vogue, and 1 or 2 looks from his collection would end up on some glamazon model in the glossy pages, and he didn't necessarily love that because he wanted this neutrality in the woman he was kind of appealing to. She's, you know, ageless, she's worldly, she comes from everywhere and anywhere. And I think that's an amazing point with Rihanna, because yeah, anyone can be a Dries woman now.
Yeah.
I think, like you said, it's just super wearable. And he always thinks about that kind of the end customer. Like even with, you know, the shows, I think he's really so forward thinking in terms of how does this appeal to everyone? How can we kind of put those pieces together individually? And, you know, it has really kind of wide mass appeal, which is amazing.
I think, I can't remember the quote either, but he said that the woman that he designs for is more important than his clothes themselves. And I think that there's a lot of, obviously, egotistical designers nowadays, and that is refreshing in itself, that, yeah, like you said, that he's considered that what's at the heart of his design is the end customer and like the person wearing this actually on the street, and how it makes them feel to be like wearing that piece.
Do we think that's, I guess, his legacy, his grand legacy, is that mentality, or his mentality as a designer, really focusing on the clothes, really, especially today, because I think we're so focused on.
Yeah, there are very few
Yes.
Yeah, there are few
equivalent
real-
brands, are there? I mean, maybe Max Mara and the lovely Ian Griffiths, maybe Lutz in Paris, but there are not many brands that are not chasing celebrity. And
It's the same, like, again, like about the whole anti-ad thing, like you've never been on the tube and seen like a giant Dries billboard, or like been on your phone and it's like a sponsored ad for Dries Van Noten, like, but it's kind
maybe
of incredible
that's the
that
secret to
exactly
long life.
like that he doesn't have to do that. Like it's about a respect for the craftsmanship and not about like the placement of this ad.
Yeah, if you don't push to be in fashion, you can't be out of it, I guess.
Do you think that is like a byproduct of having the same person at the head of the brand for so long? That, I don't know, I'm just thinking aloud, like, it's not like they keep changing head and then that one person wants to prove themselves and push it maybe further than the last person, or sort of really stake their claim in this chapter of the brand. Do you think because he's been there for so long, he just had nothing to prove, and maybe that's why it can feel more relaxed and natural, because maybe it is?
Yeah,
That's a really good point.
I think that's an amazing point, and I think I agree.
Yeah.
He said in a lot of interviews that, you know, in the late 90s, early 2000s, when the big conglomerates were kind of scooping up these independent brands and feeding this monopolized machine that we now live in, this fashion dystopia, really, he was adamant not to be a part of that, A, because he didn't want to compromise himself as a creative, and B, because for him it was always about the making of clothes. He comes from a family of tailors and boutique business owners, so he's always been a part of that. So yeah, I can see why someone like him wouldn't appeal to that machine, which we see today, the 4-year contracts of big brands like Gucci and Balenciaga, and this overturn of let's make something exciting and get that few years.
Chasing the moment.
Chasing the moment.
Nothing
It's
more.
chasing the moment, and
Yeah.
I don't think Dries has ever chased
Exactly.
that moment.
Yeah,
Well,
it
I
becomes
think-
like a circus, and I don't feel like Dries is a circus.
Yeah. And like you said, he's so much about his craft and about the making and the makers and the artisans and all of those partners that he has. I think, that's really important to him, and it shines through in all the work that he does, that attention to detail, and coming from a background of tailors and artists and, makers, I think it really shines through.
He has his factories in Calcutta, and he
Yeah.
works with the local communities on a lot of his embroidery, which I think is another big chapter in his legacy.
Yeah.
I have another question, actually, which is semi-related. This is from Quinn Cunningham. He says, Dries proved you can support your suppliers and artisans and make a profit while being ethical. Why is it so hard for other brands to do the same?
Good question.
Because they're not chasing the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they are chasing the moment, rather.
Yeah.
I just
think
think
it's-
he's...
oh, sorry, go on.
You go.
Just not to say that other brands are like careless, but I think that he obviously has such a deep reverence for the craftsmanship, not just of his own, but from like the, I don't know if you've seen the Dries documentary, obviously it's so good. You can clearly see that he's like caring so much from the genesis of the, like from how the fabric is created, like where it's woven, like he's taking such great attention to detail from like the very genesis that I think unless you have, it's not something that you can like suddenly start caring about, like you have to have always cared about. Yeah.
Well, I think it goes back to that idea of, the brands are so big now, right? There are 1,000,001 stakeholders or 1,000,001 kind of checkpoints you have to get through to decide on a font for your next campaign. And Dries staying independent for all those years, it really was kind of what he wanted, right? He got to pick and choose, and he was really in control of it. Whereas I think a lot of creative directors now are very out of control with what they do. And then there's also the whole bottom line mentality, and what can we do cheaper, quicker, rather than more thoughtful and honest.
Yeah, the sense of immediacy is like something that I think plagues every day, every aspect of life now. And it's like the notion like you're only as good as your last collection. Like people can't wait to.
Good as your last meme.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it, and even these kind of relationships with like artisan producers, like everything takes time. Like it's not some, but if you don't have that time or like you're not given that opportunity to actually, it's like quick, like that. How it can't, it's impossible.
Yeah. I think, it's one of those brands, and he's one of those people where I immediately go to, well, if he's not doing it, just shut it down. I guess when you think about it, the amount of jobs and livelihood that Dries
Yeah, I
Van
think
Noten,
he
the man
read
and the
like
brand.
3,000 people, families that he feeds in his embroidery factory in India. So, he was like, I don't want to shut it down.
Yeah, I don't think you can.
Yeah, a lot of people depend on it, including some of my graduates. But
Yeah.
Exactly. What do we think is going to happen to the brand?
Well, I really hope that whoever takes it over doesn't drop Dries and makes it a Van Noten. I hate when people do that. I don't.
no names.
Yeah, like I hate when people do that. So as long as they don't do that, then like, are we okay? But I know that in-house are designing for the next women's wear collection. Obviously, that will be really interesting to see. And like you said, he's taken an advisory role. I'm pretty sure. I think he's excited for it to continue. I read that he wants to see what someone else can do at the helm there. I just think it's imperative, obviously, that they respect the legacy. But I can't see him pick. Like, I can't see it being someone that wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
At a house
But
like
it's quite an
Dries Van Noten.
important sort of democratic message, really, isn't it, for
Yeah.
to hand it over to somebody while you're still living or still there. Is,
I mean, it must be exciting
Yeah.
to,
Yeah,
to
truly.
think about how someone is going to reimagine his CV.
Yeah, it feels more like, it feels almost more like, you know, when Jean-Paul Gaultier chooses people for the couture and like
Yeah.
you see he's like so excited. It feels more like that than like, I don't know, someone in some faraway
pushed
office
out.
being like, who's going to make me the most money today?
Yeah.
Like, maybe we're romanticizing it, I don't know, but that's
I mean, I
what
really
it feels
hope
like.
that this is what it's going to be.
I'm quite excited to see what's going to be next.
Yeah. I think I have it in my head that it'll probably be an appointment from
Within.
from within.
Yeah.
What makes
I don't
sense?
see them doing a, you know,
A shop around.
right. But with that being said, do we have any fan castings for Dries Van Noten?
Yeah. You go.
yeah, Laura and I were chatting beforehand, and we both said the same person at the same time. But then Laura came up with probably an even better one. We both said Heider Ackerman,
I was thinking.
and then I thought, here's the white man saying a white man,
I also
Laura,
thought that Wales Bonner could have a real good go there.
which is a
I
much
feel like
more
she has
inclusive choice.
similar reverence to craftsmanship, all about like, and also like a cultural sensitivity to like looks that are inspired by, you know, different regions around the world, but interpreted in a way that feels like extremely like respectful and beautiful.
Yeah, it's never felt like
It's, like I think that he has never like Dries has never been a gimmick like, and that's
It's never
you
felt
can't
like
say that,
appropriation,
like,
has it really?
for a lot of people, for a lot of
reverent,
designers.
I think.
So I think that she could do really amazing things there. And we were also saying whether or not they would split menswear and womenswear to have a different creative director for both. I do think that what's so successful for him is the consistent voice. So maybe it wouldn't work for someone else, but it's like so hard to replace him that like maybe it could work better to have two creative directors.
Yeah, and it's interesting as a women's wear, menswear brand that it hasn't had menswear tacked onto it like so many brands. They were both there from the beginning, so I think that's quite important.
I think the Grace would be fantastic.
Yeah, it would be so good.
Van Noten. And I think it also opens up the question to this idea of how designers look at other cultures and how they incorporate that into their design process, especially Western designers looking to Eastern cultures. Why do we think Dries has been so good at it without being accused of?
He's involved people, not appropriated them, I think.
Yeah, 100%. I think there's just such a great respect as well for
Yeah.
all of the cultures that the brand has tapped into. And like you said, they're part of the process. It's not appropriating in any way. It's involved, it's listening.
It's celebratory,
Exactly,
it's
yeah.
respectful.
And they're like, attending his shows. I know that the head of embroidery, like the lady that runs the embroidery factory in India, was at his show last night with her family. And like, there's just like a great respect. You know, it's not like, oh, you're doing something for me. It's not like transactional. Like I think he feels like I couldn't really do my job without you, rather than like you should be grateful to be like making fabric for Dries Van Noten type thing.
Yeah.
Like he has a deep respect. Yeah.
And therefore we're very modern in a way.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we worried that the brand is going to feel a need to evolve in a more drastic way?
I don't think if you look at other brands that have decided to do that, it's been very successful. So hopefully they would have learned from a few of the recent appointments that have been like super like big
Go on, Laura.
departures for the brand.
Do we dare name names?
No, I mean, I just think that, yeah, people, but that's the whole thing about like, you know, wanting to be like an internet brand, like these crazy appointments. You know, obviously Demna at Balenciaga was so successful and became the zeitgeist for so many years of like, they were the biggest selling brand for like, I don't know how many years in a row, that people really want, and like Virgil at Louis Vuitton, like there are a couple of examples where that can be successful and that really reignites a brand to a different customer. But I do think that it's also like not always the best choice.
Yeah.
Is there anything from this collection, this finale collection, that maybe we wish we saw more of? Or is it the perfect farewell?
Ooh.
I think it's the perfect farewell for him. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, wouldn't change anything.
I love the shimmery lame pieces.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I thought the accessories were so good. This like snakeskin shoes, so good, and the massive, massive bags.
It was that one pink satin coat. That I've been thinking about all day. I kind of wish there was a bit more of that, but then I'm like, if there was more of that, would it feel less special?
It feels so special because it's like that.
I was going through the pictures and I was like, oh, but that is like, it's so gorgeous. That one.
Left.
Yeah, I mean,
If anyone at Dries is watching, if you got one of those lying around, so that's like the perfect jacket, I think.
yeah. I mean, I always think about Dries as like fantastic with color, and I think
So good.
so good.
Like I would say like one of the best colorists. Like
Yeah, his that collection he did with Christian Lacroix and those like hot pinks and the leopard and the tiger. I thought it was phenomenal. And I guess the homosexual in me wanted more of that. It felt new. It felt nice. It felt like it was closing a chapter and opening a new one at the same time.
I also love the kind of more slightly sports wear aspects, like the silhouettes. Like I think the see-through
Yeah, lots of bellowed pockets.
jackets and kind of like the. Not anorak's not the right word, but like you know what I
Cargo-y,
mean.
Parachute-y.
Yeah, but that's a better word than. Yeah, I love those elements.
How do we differentiate the Dries man and woman? Or is the dialogue just so...
Well, I feel like if you put all of these looks on female models and that was a Dries women's wear collection, like you would still eat that up. Like I don't think that there's a big disparity.
I agree.
Agreed.
And imagine you saw them together, you think like, wow, they're the coolest couple I've ever seen.
Thinking that, I was like, I imagine there's not like the Dries man and the Dries woman, it's like the Dries group and they're in like an ancestral friendship.
Yeah.
Kind of couple. This is the vibe that I get. They all borrow each other's clothes.
Yeah.
And they all look great.
I think Dries has always been a really interesting brand because it's one that people wear, like people really incorporate into their lives
Yeah.
Yeah.
beyond trends. I think I've been to thrift shops a lot where there's just been a Dries jumper randomly that I'm like,
Have it.
yeah, oh my God. It's like somebody really bought this in a shop, like wore
Yeah.
it and loved it and lived in it.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those brands today that not a lot of brands can say they have that touch in culture without, again, that over-the-top marketing that everyone else is so reliant on.
Absolutely.
I have some more questions from social. Will the brand be perceived differently after Dries's departure by the industry? We talked about
Wait and see.
big names being at the show. How do we think it's gonna play out?
I just think it's a wait and see question as to who and what happens.
Yeah. It's just very dependent on who fills those boots and the direction that they take the brand in. It's all kind of all resting on that, essentially.
What could be the worst thing to happen to the Dries Van Noten brand?
I knew you were going to ask that.
Taylor Swift takes over.
Yeah,
Dropping the Dries, that was me.
I
Yeah.
think that's a really
I hate when
valid
don't do that.
VN
Yeah.
logo belt.
Huge logo.
Yeah, like, oh my God. Yeah, monogram.
Although I do remember in that shoot from the sweater is actually monogrammed to DVN.
Yeah.
I take it all back.
But that was 40 years ago. So, yeah. Less ego now, clearly.
for
Well, maybe they'll play up heritage. in the next-
Maybe.
in the next week.
Maybe see that ID shoot.
That jumper would be like the first thing they reference for the collection. The whole collection would all be hinged on that.
Yeah.
Actually, how much was that sweater? Can we?
Oh yeah, the price
see
is
it.
crazy.
£95. There you go.
Excuse me.
That's a little look back at 40 years of luxury fashion.
Yeah, now it's
£95,
what, $9.50.
Yeah, at least.
Amazing. Do we have any final thoughts on Dries's final farewell?
Thank you. No, I'm kidding. No, I think it was like, just like, as we've said, really like kudos, well done. And I am excited to see who takes it over and where they take it. And I think in September, oh no, that's going to be the last ones, but in February, we'll all be like a bit kind of like Sean's debut for McQueen, like we're all going to be really ready to, and waiting to see like what happens.
Yeah, I just hope.
Invite us back.
Yeah, let's review it then.
No, I just hope that everyone chills out and just lets the new person like
Yeah.
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 because it's not an easy thing to do. And I think
No.
you just brought up the McQueen collection. I think that was the lesson to everybody. Like, it's clothes. Like, it's important and we love it, but like, no death threats, please.
Yeah.
Like, I think
Yeah.
that was taken too far.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think in the Dries philosophy of it all, he would want us to really ruminate on something and not give it an immediate.
Yeah, and certainly not be ego-led or in any way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait for them to drop the Dries.
Yeah.
Just drop the V.
I'm joking. And in a few months' time, I'll have you all back to talk about the first creative director. We'll see. Amazing. Thank you guys for tuning into our Dries Van Noten panel. Let us know in the comments what you thought of the collection, and we'll see you next time.